Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're all well and having a really great day so far. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Emma and I make videos on my weight loss journey, travel, beauty, lifestyle, and I may even venture into a little bit of fashion at some point. But today's video is about my top 10 tips for starting or even restarting, like myself, the Fast 800. So if that sounds good to you, grab yourself a drink, subscribe if you haven't already, and keep on watching. On Wednesday, I uploaded my Fast 800 Weight Loss Diary 2023 intro video, and if you haven't seen that already, I will link it in the description box in case you want to check it out. So for me, I'm restarting the Fast 800, and as this isn't my first rodeo, there was 10 things that I learned when I did the diet last year that really helped me, just made my life that little bit easier, and I'm going to be implementing them this week, just to set myself up well and give myself a great chance of having a really good first week on the plan. So hopefully you'll find some of them useful, and if I do mention any products during the video, I will also link them in the description box below. So my first tip is give yourself a couple of weeks to prepare for starting the Fast 800. I know that it can be, really exciting to start something new and we want to get going and start losing weight quickly, but you don't want to add any extra pressure onto yourself. There's going to be a lot of information to take in. You may want to implement some of the things that I'm going to suggest during this video, so don't pile the pressure on by telling yourself you're going to start this plan first thing in the morning. Give yourself a couple of weeks breathing space, get all your ducks in a row, and then this will be as stress-free as possible for you, but you don't want to make it a really stressful, miserable experience. So I think those 2 weeks, use them well, plan appropriately, and you're going to be heading towards a really good first week result. My second tip is to read the Fast 800 book, and everything you need to know about the Fast 800 is in here, from how Michael Mosley developed the diet to the science behind it to what's involved with actually doing the Fast 800. It's not a big book. There is also, this part of the book at the back is all recipes, which is obviously really useful, but in terms of the main content of the book, it's only 167 pages, so not too many. But I also have this on Audible and I like to listen to it in the car, sometimes on the train or when I'm doing ironing, because we're all busy people, we haven't always got time aside to sit down and read, so we can digest all the information from here whilst doing other things, and I found that really helpful. When you start a new diet or eating plan, it can feel like there's a lot of information thrown at you at the start. I definitely like to refer back to the book, because I don't always digest things straight away. I like to go away, can think about it a little bit, and just dip in and out of this as and when I need to. But it is set in a really sort of user-friendly way. The Audible's very good as well. You don't feel bored when you're reading it. It's very easy reading, and I did get through it quite quickly. I think it's important to make time to really understand the plan, because the last thing you want to do is jump into something with 2 feet, think that you're trying so hard and be disappointed at the end of the week when you don't get the result you were looking for because you may be rushed into it and misunderstood something. So I would highly recommend this book. The recipes are also really good at the back, and that will start you off well on the plan as well. Tip number 3 is to clear out your kitchen cupboards. Just go through all of your cupboards and remove all of the food that you're no longer going to be eating whilst on the Fast 800. I don't know about you, but if there's cakes, chocolates and biscuits in the house, then I can't leave them alone. I will be thinking about them constantly, and it will make it really difficult for me to stay on track if I'm not supposed to be eating those types of foods. The Fast 800 does cut out sugar, so unfortunately those types of snacks you're not going to be able to eat. Also pastas, rice, potatoes, bread, things like that really. I would also remove as well. Just take the temptation out of your house completely. I think Michael Mosley does say that willpower is overrated, and I do agree with that. Why make things harder for yourself? If somebody in your family was trying to give up smoking, you wouldn't expect there to be cigarettes all over the house tempting them every day. And I think we need to work in a similar way when, you know, we start a new plan as well. I'm not suggesting that you throw away all the groceries that you do have. I mean, obviously groceries are expensive and we don't want to be wasteful either. So in giving yourself a couple of weeks to prepare for the plan, some of the food that you already have you may want to eat. You may want to donate some of it to a food bank or to friends and family. I'm not, you know, necessarily suggesting that you be as extreme as throwing it all in the rubbish straight away. I know this is not necessarily an easy thing to do when you've got other people living in the house that are not following the Fast 800. So if you've got children, for example, or maybe a partner, if they want sweet treats, I'd maybe collate them all together in one place and put them out of sight. You know, they're still going to be in the house, but don't have them out on the kitchen counter when they're in your eye line. If you're not seeing these things every day, you'll be less likely to think about them and be tempted. So I'd pop them in a tin, put them up on the top shelf, and then, as I say, if they're not in your immediate eye line, maybe this will help you. It's also a really good opportunity to have a good clear out and also take stock of the food that you already do have. Things like olive oil, spices, salt and pepper, you're going to be using a lot of on the Fast 800. Stock cubes as well. Spices especially, I know that I've bought some to make a specific recipe, and over the months they've worked their way further and further and further back in the cupboard, and they've probably been there for about 5 years now. It's always shocking when you do a cupboard clear out that some of these things went out of date a year or so ago, but it's a good time to maybe throw out anything that's expired, and if there are going to be things that you're needing to use for the Fast 800, then you know that you'll need to buy those in your first week shop. Tip number 4 is to try some new recipes. When I started reading about the Fast 800 and the types of foods that I was able to have on the plan, my first reaction was, oh God, this is going to be really plain food. Get ready for a lot of chicken and broccoli in your future. And of course you can have chicken and broccoli if that's what you enjoy eating, but it's not the most exciting dinner to have in the world. There is absolutely no reason to eat plain food, you know, unless that's obviously what you like. There's plenty of different recipes available with sauces, and they're always really tasty. As I said, there is a whole host of recipes in the back of this book, but there's also some dedicated recipe books from the Fast 800, and two that I use all the time are these two here, the Fast 800 recipe book and the Fast 800 Easy. I have used these books to death. They're looking probably a little bit worse for wear, but that's because I use them all the time, and I have to say the recipes that I have tried the whole family has enjoyed. They're very quick and easy to make, they don't take hours and hours, and that was something that was important to me. I work full time, and when I get back in the evening, especially if I'm in the office, I get home after 7. So I don't want to be food prepping and cooking for, you know, an hour or 2 hours before I can eat. Most of these recipes, I would say that you can go from starting to cook to having it on your table within 20 minutes to half an hour. So that works out really well for me. Some of the recipes that we really enjoy in our house. One of the recipes we really enjoy is the sesame seed salmon with broccoli and tomatoes. Very quick and easy to make. You just bang everything in one baking tray and shove it in the oven. And again, limited washing up as well, which is always a bonus. These prawn mayo wraps are also really nice and quick for a fast lunch as well. You don't always want to be eating just a salad every day. Lettuce, tomato and cucumber is very nice, but it gets boring after a while. So when I do salads, and I do eat salads often, I try and vary the vegetables in them day to day. And there's also the Fast 800 Easy. There is many recipes in here that I've recommended. If you've watched any of my past Fast 800 videos, videos, and if I had to pick one of the recipe books to recommend to you, this would be the one. I do really enjoy a lot of the recipes in here. But earlier this year they did bring out the Fast 800 Keto. I've not tried anything from here yet, so I'm sure that I will do over the coming weeks, but this is also an option if following the keto plan is something that you're interested in. I will say though, with trying new recipes, be careful not to overwhelm yourself. Don't be walking into this thinking, right, I'm going to cook from scratch every day, we're going to have a new recipe for lunch and dinner every single day. That's just too much in the first week. It would be for me anyway. So what I would suggest is trying maybe 2 recipes a week. If we try something new, we tend to do it on a Saturday and a Sunday, just because we've got that little bit more time at the weekend to prepare food, and if it's quick, we can obviously see how long it takes us to make it. We can add that into, you know, a weekday meal rotation in the coming weeks and months. But yeah, don't take on too much. Little and often I think is key, but make sure that you are trying new things, because variety is what's going to keep you interested in the plan long term. And that leads me very nicely into tip number 5, which is to plan your meals and order your shopping in advance. So when I've had a really good week on the Fast 800, I've been organised. I tend to write down all of the dinners and lunches that I have, and then I have, you know, a couple of options for breakfast that I can pick and choose each day. But it's always because I know what I'm doing and the food is there to hand. Where I've found it difficult in the past is that if I haven't done the shopping, I tend to reach for what's available to me, and 99% of the time that is going to be something that is not Fast 800 friendly. Often that type of situation can derail me as well. So for me, organising and planning is absolutely key. Another thing as well, the shopping is getting more and more expensive. So if you know exactly what you're going to make, order the necessary ingredients for that, you know that you're not going to be wasting money on things that you don't need, either because you're buying too much or you end up buying extra things that, you know, you don't use, they go bad and you end up throwing them away. I also think that when you're planning your meals, it's important to be realistic. Think about what your commitments are during the week. I know that on the 2 days that I'm in the office, I'm going to be late getting home in the evening. I'm not going to get home until after 7. So on those days, I'm not going to have a meal that takes very long to prepare, because I want to come home, eat relatively quickly, you know, and then sort of settle in for the evening. I don't want to be up cooking until all hours and then washing 40 pans up in the kitchen. Also, think about recipes that you might be able to batch cook. You can very easily double up the portions of the recipes and put half of it in the freezer for another time. This is an absolute lifesaver, because obviously you're cutting out cooking time for another day, and that makes things even quicker as well if you're busy and got a lot of things on. For lunch, I take a packed lunch when I go to the office, but when I'm at home, I know that I can have an omelette if I want one, just because the kitchen is available to me. So be realistic. You don't have to be perfect from the get-go. If it means that you go into the supermarket and you just buy a salad bowl and a pack of chicken to go in it, then that's what you need to do. You don't have to turn into some sort of domestic god or goddess overnight. I personally prefer to order my food shop online, and this is absolutely personal preference at the end of the day, because I know a lot of people do like to look around the supermarket and choose their own food. For me, I prefer not to, just because when I'm ordering online, I'm very task orientated. I'm just typing the food from my shopping list into the search bar and adding it to the basket. So firstly, I don't add in extra things that I didn't want to buy because I've suddenly impulse bought something as I've walked past it in the supermarket. And secondly, I'm not walking past, you know, things that really tempt me, like cakes, chocolates and biscuits. So that's what works for me. Personal choice, as I've said, but something to consider. Tip number 6 is to make sure that you've got some basic kitchen utensils and equipment. So for a lot of us that are starting the Fast 800, maybe you were eating a lot of takeaways, ready meals, frozen foods that you just bang into the oven, The Fast 800 is going to be quite a different routine for you, because a lot of the time you'll be preparing food from scratch, and that will involve a little bit of cooking. It's nothing to be worried about. A lot of the recipes are very straightforward, but you just want to make sure that you've got a few bits of kitchen equipment ready, so if the recipe calls for it, you've got it ready to go. The first thing that I would buy is a set of digital kitchen scales. This is going to be really useful for weighing and measuring ingredients. I would also buy a set of measuring spoons. These are really quite cheap, but I think that a lot of the recipes do call for using different spices, and the recipe has balanced the spices accordingly to give the best flavour. So you do want to be quite accurate when you're measuring them out and not sort of free-handing chucking it in the pan. I would also get a measuring jug, maybe one of the Pyrex jugs that has the measurements up the side. I find that really useful if I have to measure and make some stock for a recipe. And I would also get some Tupperware or glass Tupperware. These are really good for food storage in general, if you want to keep things a little bit fresher inside the fridge, or if you're making things in bulk to put in the freezer, or even taking some leftovers for lunch the next day. These things are really good, easy to transport food with you as well, so I would definitely recommend getting a set of those. Tip number 7 is to take your weight and measurements. I think it's really important to document your starting point, because I'm sure as I go through the diet there's going to be periods of time which I find a bit tough, and sometimes it's very useful to look back at where you've come from. Of course you can use like a basic set of scales to take your weight and a tape measure to record your body measurements, but I think I've said before that I'm a very visual person and I really enjoy using the Renfo scales. I will put up a screenshot of the app that I use, but basically the Renfo scales take into consideration a lot of other measurements as well rather than just your weight. There's also BMI, body fat percentage, subcutaneous fat, visceral fat, protein, water, muscle mass percentage. So all of these things, I find that really interesting to look to see how they're improving week on week, and personally I find that extremely motivating. I also have a digital measuring tape, and this links to the app as well. So when I take the measurements, it automatically records the reading for me in the same app. And again, you can look at nice graphs over time and see how the measurements change. As I said, those things I personally find really motivating, but again, if you're not the same, there is nothing wrong with basic set of scales to take your weight and a dress measuring tape to record your body measurements. Tip number 8 is to take photos. So when I lost weight a few years ago, I didn't have very many pictures of before I started my journey. That was really because I didn't feel very comfortable in my body, and I tended to shy away from the camera. But when it came to looking at my progress, I really enjoyed looking back at those few pictures that I had. And I found it extremely motivating to see how my efforts were paying off. Now, I don't mean that you take a picture and you stick it on the fridge or some, horrible shit like that people used to suggest years and years ago. Just take the picture. You don't need to look at it. You don't need to put it on the fridge. It's just for reference. So, in a month or so's time you can maybe do another photo and you can compare, because when you're looking in the mirror every day, doing your makeup or you don't really notice the changes in yourself because they're quite small changes over time. So it is really nice to have a photo to look back at. I always think as well a full length picture, although it's scary and we don't like them, it's really good to have a full length picture because you just don't see the difference in yourself. I remember my mum saying to me, you know, when I lost weight before, that she could really see a difference in my silhouette at the back. Well, I'm not looking at myself, looking behind me all the time, so I never appreciated how much my body changed in that way. And if I'd have had a photo to compare to, I think that would have been really helpful for me and nice for me to see how my body had changed over time. Tip number 9 is to keep a food diary, and I've got the Fast 800 Health Journal. This is quite a nice book. You can sort of document, there's a food planner in here, there's also some pages to make some notes and a shopping list, and then you can just sort of record your day. It's a nice book. Obviously you don't need to have a Fast 800 food planner specifically. A notepad and a pen would work just the same, or if you prefer a more digital approach and you want everything on your phone, apps like MyFitnessPal are also really good. Now, I like to keep a food diary. I find them extremely useful because at some point I know that I'm going to step on the scales and I'm going to be disappointed with the result that I get. It's in those weeks that I find the food diary is particularly useful, and that's because you can look back. When you're standing on the scales, you forget what you've done during the week, so it may be that when you look back you can see that you've had some extra calories for a few days. It might be that you've had, you know, a cake or the odd treat that is not normally part of the plan. Things like that will help explain to you the reason that you're getting the result that you're getting. Likewise, there may be a period in the future where I hit a plateau, and I might want to revisit a week where I got a really good result, and maybe, you know, use that menu again to try and, you know, get things going a bit more. So I think food diaries are really good, but you do have to be honest. Everything that you've eaten or drank, you need to write it down on your food diary. Otherwise, there's just no point in doing it. You're not trying to impress anybody. Nobody is going to look at this. You're not handing it in to the teacher. This is just for yourself. So there's no reason that you can't be honest and write everything down in here. And finally, tip number 10 is to get yourself some keto test strips. And this is not a necessary item by any stretch of the imagination. I would describe this one more as a nice to have. But the Fast 800 is a ketogenic diet, and what that means is that because we're cutting out sugar and carbohydrates are now at a much lower level, your body stops burning sugar for energy and it starts burning fat. And when that switch over happens, your body's in what they call ketosis. Using the test strips, you just dip one of the test strips into your urine. It will tell you whether your body's in ketosis or not. So initially, when I first started doing the Fast 800, I was a little bit apprehensive, a bit unsure. Am I eating the right things? Is it working? And if you can just test your urine after a couple of days, you can see you're in ketosis. It just gives you that little bit of reassurance to know, you know, you're doing the right thing, everything's working as it should work, and it's just for that reason that I suggest getting some. So guys, those were my top 10 tips for starting or restarting the Fast 800. I really hope that you found this video useful. If you did, please let me know by giving the video a thumbs up. If you're considering trying a couple of the tips yourself, then please let me know in the comments which ones you might want to implement, or actually you might think that I've missed something off my list, and if that's the case, definitely comment below, because anything that will help me is always greatly appreciated as well. I will be uploading my Fast 800 weight loss diary videos on a weekly basis from the 12th of July. So if you do want to watch those and come on the journey with me, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future uploads. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye.